The Supreme Leader. On June 27, 1981, an explosion tore through a crowded mosque in Tehran during a political speech. The blast was devastating. Shards of metal and debris flew through the air, injuring dozens of people inside the building. Among those wounded was a rising cleric and political figure named Ali Kham. The explosion shattered Kham's right arm so badly that doctors could never fully repair it. The damage left his arm permanently paralyzed. He was only 42 years old at the time. For most politicians or religious leaders, an attack like that would have ended their careers. Many would have stepped away from public life. Some might have lived quietly, focusing on recovery. Ali Kham did the opposite. Instead of retreating, he continued climbing the political ladder inside Iran's revolutionary system. The injury became part of his image. To supporters, it symbolized sacrifice. To opponents, it showed how close Iran's politics were to violence and power struggles. But Kham kept moving forward. Over the next decade he built alliances, gained influence among powerful clerics, and proved himself deeply loyal to the revolutionary leadership that ruled Iran after 1979. 8 years after the bombing that nearly killed him, history gave him an opportunity few expected. In 1989, Iran's founding supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, died after ruling the country for a decade following the Islamic Revolution. His death created a massive power vacuum. Inside Iran's political system, the supreme leader holds the ultimate authority. The position stands above the president, above the parliament, above the courts, and even above the military. Whoever filled that role would control the direction of the entire Islamic Republic. Many expected a powerful senior cleric to take the position. Some of the candidates were religious scholars with far higher rank and prestige than Ali Kham. But politics is rarely simple. Kham was not the most senior cleric. He was not the most respected theologian. He was not even the most famous political figure. Yet he had something equally valuable. He was loyal, he was cautious, and he was willing to do what others hesitated to do. In the end, the leadership council selected him. Ali Kham became Iran's new supreme leader. From that moment forward, he became the single most powerful man in the country. For the next 36 years, he ruled Iran from behind the walls of power. Nothing important happened in the country without his approval. He controlled the armed forces. He oversaw the Revolutionary Guard. He had authority over the intelligence services. And he ultimately decided the direction of Iran's nuclear program. Presidents came and went. Governments changed. Political factions rose and fell. But Kham remained. During his decades in power, Iran faced wars, sanctions, and growing tensions with the West. The country's nuclear ambitions placed it under intense international scrutiny. Negotiations with world powers came and collapsed repeatedly. At home, the country also faced waves of protest. Economic struggles, political repression, and social tensions pushed many Iranians into the streets over the years. Some demonstrations were small, others became massive nationwide movements. Each time, Kham's government responded with force. Security forces crushed protests. Demonstrators were arrested by the thousands. During the largest uprising since the Islamic Revolution, thousands of people were killed or imprisoned as the government reasserted control. Supporters viewed Kham as a defender of Iran's independence and Islamic system. Critics saw him as an authoritarian ruler who maintained power through repression. But either way, his authority remained unchallenged. By the early months of 2026, Ali Kham was 86 years old. Time had taken its toll. He appeared in public less and less frequently. His speeches were rare. When he did appear, it was usually through carefully controlled broadcasts. Many Iranians had not seen him in person for years. Behind the scenes, his security measures had become extreme. Beneath his compound in central Tehran, a deep underground bunker had been built. The structure was designed to survive missile attacks and potential assassination attempts. The bunker was so deep underground that the elevator ride alone reportedly took more than 5 minutes to reach the bottom. Kham had survived many threats over the decades. He had survived the 1981 bombing that nearly killed him. He had survived assassination attempts. He had ruled during wars, sanctions, and internal unrest. Over time, he came to believe that he was untouchable, unreachable, protected by layers of security, intelligence networks, and loyal military forces. But history has a way of proving even the most powerful leaders wrong. The beginning of the war. On the morning of February 28, 2026, the situation in the Middle East changed dramatically. The United States and Israel launched a massive coordinated military operation against Iran. The Pentagon called the mission Operation Epic Fury. Israel gave the same operation a different name, Operation Roaring Lion. The official goals were clear. Destroy Iran's ballistic missile arsenal. Cripple the networks of allied militias and proxy forces across the region. And most importantly, prevent Iran from ever building a nuclear weapon. But there was another objective that neither government publicly announced. A hidden target, the elimination of Iran's leadership. And at the very top of that list was Ali Khamenei. The trigger, the final spark that triggered the attack came from diplomatic negotiations. For weeks, American and Iranian diplomats had been meeting in Oman, trying to negotiate a new nuclear agreement. The talks were tense from the start. The United States demanded that Iran completely abandon uranium enrichment. Iran refused. From Tehran's perspective, enrichment was a matter of sovereignty and national pride. From Washington's perspective, it was a pathway to nuclear weapons. On February 27, the negotiations collapsed. The talks ended without agreement. Less than 24 hours later, the military operation began. The first strikes. At 2:30 a.m. Eastern Time, U.S. President Donald Trump released a pre-recorded message from Mar-a-Lago. In the video, he spoke about the dangers of Iran's nuclear ambitions and the need to protect global security. While the message was playing, the first missiles were already on their way toward Iran. The war had begun. The attack on Tehran. It was early Saturday morning in Tehran. The first day of the Iranian workweek. People were waking up. Children were preparing for school. Workers were beginning their morning commutes. Then the explosions began. Massive blasts echoed across the city. Downtown Tehran shook as missiles struck major government buildings. Thick columns of black smoke rose into the sky. Targets included the presidential palace, the Ministry of Defense, and multiple military command centers. Another strike hit the compound where Ali Khamenei lived and worked. Residents reported hearing fighter jets roaring overhead. Missiles streaked across the sky. Explosions erupted across the city in rapid succession. Panic spread quickly. Children ran out of schools. Cars stopped in the middle of streets. People rushed into buildings or fled the city. Within minutes, communications across Tehran began to collapse. Internet connectivity dropped to nearly half its normal level as Iranian authorities attempted to control the flow of information. Israel's largest air operation, the Israeli portion of the operation, was historic. Around 200 Israeli fighter jets took part in the mission. They struck roughly 500 targets across Iran in a single coordinated wave. More than 550 precision-guided munitions were dropped during the attack. Air defense systems were destroyed. Ballistic missile launch sites were targeted. Military airfields and command centers were struck. Cities across Iran were hit, including Tehran, Isfahan, Karaj, Kermanshah, Tabriz, Shiraz. At the same time, U.S. Navy destroyers in the Persian Gulf and the Mediterranean Sea launched Tomahawk cruise missiles at Iranian military facilities. Command centers belonging to the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps were among the primary targets. Missile production facilities were also struck. The target, Khamenei. 7 Israeli missiles were confirmed to have struck the district where Khamenei's compound was located. According to American and Israeli intelligence officials, the operation had been months in preparation. The CIA had spent extensive time studying Khamenei's movements and daily routines. Since the brief but intense 12-day conflict with Israel in June 2025, Khamenei had grown extremely cautious. He rarely left his compound. When he did travel, the schedule was unpredictable. But intelligence teams eventually discovered something crucial. A meeting of senior Iranian officials had been scheduled inside his compound on the morning of February 28. For planners in Washington and Tel Aviv, that information changed everything. A senior defense official later said the decision was made quickly. The strike timeline was accelerated. The opportunity was too valuable to ignore. The moment of impact. According to Iranian state media, Khamenei was inside his office at Beit Rabari, the main building inside his compound. He was reportedly performing routine duties. He was not in the bunker. He was not hiding. He was sitting at his desk. Then the missiles hit. The explosions destroyed the buildings surrounding the office. Walls collapsed. The compound was reduced to rubble. Rescue teams arrived hours later. According to Israeli intelligence officials, Khamenei's body was eventually recovered from the debris and identified. The supreme leader was dead. Other leaders killed. Khamenei was not the only casualty. The opening wave of strikes killed several senior Iranian officials. Among them, IRGC Commander Major General Mohammad Pakpour. Defense Minister Brigadier General Amir Nasarzadeh, Cam's close advisor Ali Shamani, 4 senior intelligence commanders. Israeli officials later confirmed that approximately 30 key leaders had been targeted simultaneously across multiple locations. U.S. intelligence estimated that around 40 Iranian officials were killed during the strikes. The attack also killed several members of Cam's family, including his daughter, son-in-law, daughter-in-law, and a grandchild. Initial denials. At first, Iran denied the reports. Government officials insisted Cam was alive. The foreign ministry stated he was safe and sound. State-aligned media claimed he was actively directing military operations. But outside Iran, leaders were saying something different. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu stated publicly that there were strong indications that the supreme leader had been killed. Soon afterward, Donald Trump posted on social media that Cam was dead. The truth could not remain hidden for long. Confirmation. On Sunday morning, Iranian state television finally confirmed the news. A broadcaster reading the announcement began to cry during the live broadcast. The supreme leader had been martyred at his workplace. The government declared 40 days of national mourning. Public holidays were announced across the country. Reaction inside Iran. The response inside Iran was deeply divided. In some parts of Tehran, people opened their windows and played music. Residents cheered from apartment balconies. Witnesses reported celebrations in several neighborhoods. For many Iranians who had seen friends and family killed during protests, Cam's death felt like the end of a long era. Similar scenes appeared in Los Angeles, home to one of the world's largest Iranian exile communities. Thousands of people gathered in the streets celebrating the news. But that was only part of the story. Across Iran, millions of others mourned. In cities like Tehran, Mashhad, Isfahan, and Qom, enormous crowds filled the streets dressed in black. People carried portraits of Cam. Many cried openly. State television showed scenes of thousands gathering at memorial sites. The funeral procession became one of the largest public gatherings Iran had seen in decades. For many citizens, the issue was not simply Cam himself. It was the fact that a foreign military strike had killed the country's leader. To them, it was an attack on Iran's sovereignty. Regional reactions. The anger quickly spread beyond Iran. In Iraq, protesters stormed the U.S. consulate in Karbala. Demonstrations erupted across several countries with large Shia Muslim populations. Iran's president, Masoud Pezeshkian, called the strike a great crime. He promised the attack would not go unanswered. The Revolutionary Guard soon made a similar announcement. They declared the start of what they called the most intense offensive operation in the history of Iran's armed forces. Iran strikes back. Within hours, Iran launched waves of ballistic missiles and drones. Targets included Israel, Bahrain, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, United Arab Emirates. At the same time, Iran shut down the Strait of Hormuz to all shipping traffic. The narrow waterway is one of the most critical oil routes in the world. Roughly 20% of the global oil supply passes through it. Soon after the closure, 3 commercial vessels were struck by projectiles. Jordanian air defenses intercepted 49 Iranian drones and missiles that threatened its territory. The region was now on the edge of a much larger war. Global consequences. The economic impact appeared almost immediately. Oil prices surged on international markets. Energy companies feared a prolonged disruption of Middle Eastern exports. Airlines canceled flights across the region. Stock markets in Europe and Asia opened sharply lower. Analysts warned that if the Strait of Hormuz remained closed for more than a few days, global energy prices could rise to levels not seen in years. World leaders responded quickly. Some governments condemned the strike as a violation of national sovereignty. Others described it as a decisive moment in the long conflict surrounding Iran's nuclear program. The end of an era. Ali Cam had survived the bombing in 1981 that destroyed his arm. He had survived decades of political struggle. He had ruled Iran longer than almost anyone expected. Wars, revolutions, sanctions, and uprisings had all come and gone during his leadership. But in the end, the moment that ended his life was something much simpler. A scheduled meeting, a routine morning at his own compound, tracked for months by intelligence agencies. And when the missiles finally arrived, the man who had once believed himself unreachable was gone. The era of Iran's longtime supreme leader had ended in a single morning of fire.